So, good day, people. It's, I can't remember the date. Does it really matter? So, I'm sitting at work, and I just want to explain why I feel like I'm qualified to talk about the things I want to speak about: prison reform, drug addiction, abuse, trauma, all those things, which I think I'm pretty much an expert at since I've experienced every one. I have 17 years in jail, federal and provincial, which I am not proud of, and I do not recommend that anybody does this. I feel like we can all be misled in our young years and feel like we belong to something, and that can be enticing and force us to go down the wrong path. I really wish earlier times in my life rehabilitation was offered. This time around, my third federal sentence was the first time I was ever given the opportunity of rehabilitation, and I had to work for it, which is perfectly fine because rehabilitation without working is fine. But what I mean by that is, in order to even get the rehabilitation, my behavior had to be perfect, which really doesn't make any sense, because if we need rehabilitation, why would our behavior really be perfect? I don't edit the videos yet because I don't know how. I am not tech savvy, so this is something I'm going to learn. I started getting arrested when I was 15 years old. At that point in my life, I wanted to be a bad man. You know, I really wanted to be somebody with a reputation and, you know, all the stuff that a young criminal wants to be. The problem with that was I wasn't hard. My first time going to a real jail was the Toronto Youth Assessment Center. I'll have a different story about that because that's a whole story in itself. But the Toronto Youth Assessment Center, the first time I went in there, I was a little bit of a softie. You know, I was intimidated. I was from the suburbs, and I've never really experienced anything like that. So it was intimidating for me. But it's basically what turned me into who I became. I had to learn how to fight. I had to learn how to protect myself. And it's basically a college for criminals. You know, when I was 16 years old, they put me in boot camp. And rather than try to change our behaviors, they just turned us into machines. So I was like a 17-year-old machine who just loved being a criminal, and nobody really told me otherwise. I had fallen out with my family. I had been abused in my life, not by my family, just to make that clear. But my family, you know, my brother got charged and convicted with 2 counts of murder when I was a young guy, and it really affected my family. And I think for a long time my parents kind of just were so stressed and so overwhelmed with daily life that they didn't really know how to cope. And then my behavior on top of that just made things probably impossible for them. And at that age, I rebelled a lot because I was angry. You know, I was the 4th out of 5, and I didn't get a ton of attention, even though I did get attention. We all did. Like, my parents were very good. But because of all the stuff that was going on, and I was pretty self-sufficient in terms of, you know, handling myself in day-to-day life, pretty independent. So, you know, I kind of ended up going down the wrong path and really resenting my family out of misguidance and not really understanding life, you know. So I started doing provincial jail, and eventually I kept gradually getting worse, and went through adult, eventually went through the federal system, got 1, 2, and then a 3rd federal bit. I was addicted to heroin for 10 years, something that was maybe the worst 10 years of my life, almost shattered the relationship with my family, but has now made it way better than it ever was. Almost shattered me as a person. I experienced depression, loss of friends. Like, I don't have, you know, really a whole lot going on in my life, and that's fine because I'm working and I feel proud of myself, and that's what it's all about. Not about making phony friends happy. I think once we learn that the people that are in our life, for the most part, not everybody, are opportunists, right? So they have a goal. There's a motive. It might not necessarily be conscious. Like, it might be a subconscious thing, but believe me, there's a motive. And as soon as you don't serve a purpose for somebody, a lot of the time, they'll be out. I've just come to the conclusion that that's fine, and I only want real ones in my life anyways. So I went through the federal system. experienced drug use, a lot of violence, just a bunch of bullshit that really made my life super difficult. And honestly, like at points I felt like giving up. I was a pretty broken person, and for a long time I didn't realize that it wasn't really the addiction that I wanted. It was to get rid of the pain. And although I didn't really understand how much all this stuff affected my life, all the violence I saw, the abuse I experienced, the trauma, my brother getting locked up, the shattering of my family, just a lot of stuff, that went on in my life that made me who I am today. I've never been this strong. And honestly, I've never been this motivated. And my goal now is to just try to help people and, tell my story. I don't know, maybe write a book, but I don't know yet. I'm going to start with this, just, give people my story, offer support, and communication with anybody who needs me. If you can see, I'm sweating. I'm at work like a soldier, and I am doing this video from a machine, an excavator. So anyways, I feel like I qualify for these things because I've experienced all of them. I'm going to start coming up with ideas and topics for my videos. But I think my first real video will be on the Toronto Youth Assessment Center. It's shut down now, but it was a treacherous place. It made a lot of people in Toronto who they are today. The government is directly responsible for that, locking up kids in a prison setting, bars, 16 and 17 years old, the most violent place I've ever been. We'll talk more about it later. I look forward to telling you guys my story. I'll have some funny things involved in between, just so it's not just constant depression and sadness. But I'm a pretty kooky dude, and you guys will see that. But I really appreciate anybody who's listened, and I thank you for all your support up to this point. And I guarantee you these things will get better. I have to learn how to edit and all those things, and that will come with time. So thanks for watching my video. Have a good day.